When I was in the lobby of One World Trade Center, that's when the first plane hit, I think at 8:46. Once the plane actually hit, jet fuel went down into the lobby of the One World Trade Center, and that whole area exploded. They're basically people, I don't know how graphic to get onto this, but on fire and dead as well. If I was 3 or 4 seconds earlier, I would have been a casualty.
Hello and welcome to the Solar Maverick Podcast, where solar meets entrepreneurship and experience. I'm your host, Benoy Thanjan, so let's get into it.
Hi, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast. I'm really excited to have my co-host, Li Wang, on the podcast. He's the genius behind the Solar Maverick Podcast. He's a certified Squarespace designer as well. And we just finished a podcast about, he's helped with the Renew Energy website and the Solar Maverick Podcast website. He's also the one who came up with the name of the Solar Maverick and created kind of the whole thing. And actually, he was the one who gave me the confidence to do the podcast. And it was initially very difficult. But once we got started, and now we're more than 233 episodes, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being a part of it, So.
Thank you, Benoy. I think today let's talk about you, and not just you, because it's about you, but it's also about a greater moment in history. We're coming up on September 11th, and it's been a while, but for those who don't know, Benoy is a 9/11 survivor officially, why I said that, but it's a lot of people will talk about it in a certain way. But Benoy, you were there. Tell me about that day.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually only talked about this on the podcast on episode 1 when you interviewed me. I wasn't actually ready to talk about it at that time, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I just actually graduated from graduate school. It was 3 weeks after I graduated, and I was actually in One World Trade Center when the first plane hit the World Trade Center. I can't believe it's now been 24 years. We're actually recording this interview on September 6th, 2024. I can't believe it's been almost 24 years, and it's going to be the 25-year anniversary. It's amazing how time flies by. I know Lee and I are around the same age, and it's just amazing too, because that day is forever sketched in my memory. And it's just amazing too, how much time has actually passed by. And I'm very grateful to be able to get out of the building alive, and saw a lot of people die around me, and everything that happened that day, and all the heroes and the people who helped. Crazy day in American history that we never, I don't know. There's so many different.
So take us through that morning for you. What happened?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually worked at Two World Financial Center, which is actually close to the World Trade Center. And then I just moved to Jersey City, New Jersey. As I said, graduated from grad school, worked for Deloitte & Touche at the time in their energy group. And that's kind of how I got into renewable energy. And this is the funny story. I was actually watching Monday Night Football the day before Giants and Broncos. So I was up late, and I actually woke up late. The game was on late, and then I was disappointed the Giants lost. So I was actually going into work later than I normally did. And it's interesting. There are all these things that morning that actually delayed me. So I was taking the Pat train to World Trade Center. I went on Newark Avenue to get some snacks for during the day, and then took the train to the World Trade Center and Two World Financial Center. You have to walk through One World Trade Center, and then the hotel, the Marriott, then to get into the World Financial Center. When I was in the lobby of One World Trade Center, that's when the first plane hit, I think at 8:46. Once the plane actually hit, I guess the jet fuel went down into the lobby of the One World Trade Center, and that whole area just exploded. And then people, I don't know how graphic to get onto this, but on fire and dead as well. And if I was 3 or 4 seconds earlier, I would have been a casualty. There was someone who cut me off on the Pat train on the escalator.
Wow.
And then I saw him ended up passing away. I don't know how graphic I should get about this. So I'm just fortunate to get out of the building alive. We didn't know what was happening. And then I thought it was like 1993. I don't know if you remember, there was a bombing of the World Trade Center where they used vans and then we're in the parking lot.
Wow.
Or the bottom. So I thought it was that. I didn't realize about the planes hitting. I thought it was another like bomb within the thing. So I'm trying to evacuate and it's during rush hour. So, I'm running and jumping. Well, that's the one. First of all, once you're in this situation, you don't know how you're going to react, right? I'm seeing people just standing there, not knowing how to react. And then like I was running to get to the other side as quickly as possible in the building. And then that's where the plane hit. So there's like debris coming down and things are exploding in other parts of the lobby. There are people on fire. There's just complete disarray. And then we actually pushed over World Trade Center security to get out of the building because they would have let you go out. But it was like more dangerous to kind of stay in the building. When I was running out of the building, there's debris falling, there are people falling, their bodies on the ground. I'm jumping over bodies. I'm seeing people get hit by the debris. From that height, like people are dying instantaneously. And then I'm outside the building and I'm looking and I'm like, people are telling me it's a plane that just hit the building. And I'm like, how does that happen? And then I was outside the building and then the NYPD, FDNY are evacuating people from the building. And then I was actually helping with the evacuation of the people outside the building because, it was like disarray. People didn't know what to do. And so I was helping with the evacuation of people out of the building. And then the next plane hit. Then I knew it was definitely a terrorist act at that point. I mean, honestly, I didn't even see the plane. I heard it. And then it was like an earthquake. And then I was like, we have to like try to evacuate people out of the area as quickly as possible. And then at a certain point, I'm like, actually, it's interesting because I remember a couple police officers telling me that they're going into the building to get people. I thought, oh my gosh, that's like crazy to go into that. What we learned is after a certain point, I'm like, I should get out of the area because that's the best thing that I could do. I was helping with the evacuation, but at a certain point, I was like, I should get myself out of the area for my own safety. So then, made sure to leave the area.
And you start walking?
So I started walking and then I was staying away from any major, because they just hit the World Trade Center. I have no idea what happened in Pennsylvania and the Pentagon. And then I got to a certain point and this guy's like telling me, I think the tower is going to collapse.
Wow.
And I'm like, there's no way that tower is going to collapse. Then we see it right in our eyes, it collapsed. And you know what I told him? The second one's going to collapse too. We got to run and get out of here because we don't want to get stuck. The smoke and stuff. I mean, I already actually had like soot and smoke stuff on me. So it's interesting because cell phone service went down when the World Trade Center collapsed. I couldn't contact my family. Then I found a public phone and I was able to call them. And then I was actually at the time meeting my girlfriend at the time in Midtown. And then I was just trying to walk away from every major monument. And then actually, it's interesting, an ambulance saw me and said, hey, we want to check you out because you're in the World Trade Center because I had like the soot that you've seen. So then, they checked my vitals and checked me and they said, you're okay. And the woman's like, you're a survivor. That was the first time I realized I'm like a survivor.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And she was like, it's amazing that you're alive because like when I was in the building, like my whole life, I thought I was dead that day. So my whole life I like saw go quickly. I'm like, this is it. And somehow like there were a lot of people who passed away around me. Somehow I was able to get out of the building unhurt, which I thought was a miracle in itself. Yeah. So I was able to evacuate the building successfully, worked on the evacuation and then, stayed away from, saw both towers fall with my own eyes. Which honestly, like you see the videos, but to be there physically and to see it and be there, it's very, even today, like I do get emotional when I see the plane sit on video, so it's made me a lot stronger of a person from that experience. And so it was just a day that we'll never forget. Eventually met my girlfriend in Midtown and then we walked all the way up to Harlem to stay with her friend's place. And it was just eerie because obviously the military's coming in, planes coming in, and I don't think I understood like the gravity of what's happening. I mean, I did, but and then I was excited that, I survived it. But then at the same time, there's so many different emotions. It's actually interestingly, 3 weeks before I saw the movie Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, the survivors are talking about how did they survive? What's the purpose of their life? Survivor's guilt. And I'm like, I don't understand this whole concept that they're talking about. Then 3 weeks later,
And then you get it.
I've become like, because if you think about the last time the US has been attacked was Pearl Harbor. And then that movie came out, I think, August of 2001. And then
Wow.
I'm suddenly, a survivor of the World Trade. And like so many people want to talk to me about that. And after a while, I didn't want to tell people about it because that was like the first thing. Hundreds or even thousands of times people have asked me about it. And, I felt like we should probably do an episode about this. A lot of people have asked me to share what it was like that day. I can't believe it's 24 years and time flies by.
Yeah.
I'm happy to still be here. It's funny. People ask me what I want for my birthday. And I'd always be, I'm happy to be here because I thought that was the last day. And I've luckily had 24 more years,
Right.
After that. Also, the other thing I would say too, is I'm part of the 9/11 health registry. There are a lot of people who are still suffering. There are a lot of people actually dying as well from 9/11 related illnesses. Unfortunately, it doesn't get talked about that much. I appreciate Jon Stewart for speaking to Congress 2 or 3 years ago about this. And it's not just health, but also mental health as well, because I get to meet a lot of 9/11 survivors and families and victims. I know it's been a long time, but there are people who are still being impacted by this. And unfortunately, you don't hear about it. And the federal government cut health support for 9/11 victims or survivors of it recently, a few months ago. So it's disappointing that was done. And so, yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the high level. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, but yeah, that's the high level story. So I was considered a casualty for Deloitte & Touche because they couldn't get in touch with me. So it was just pretty amazing. And then I was able to communicate to one of my friends. So they put me as there was a website for the survivors of 9/11, and Deloitte cross-checked, even though they didn't talk to me until a few days later, that I was still alive, because I didn't get to the office, that day because I left the building. I couldn't go back to Jersey City because it was like a war zone. And at that time, they stopped. Actually, you can't go get out of Manhattan until the next day. So I had to be in Manhattan and, stay in Harlem. And yeah, there's so many different things from that, that have happened. So
Yeah. How has this experience shaped how you wake up every day now? I'm sure it still does. Like you said, you're just happy to be here.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I think when you go through a near-death experience, and by the way, it's not the only near-death experience that I've gone through, but we won't go into all that in the podcast. But I think you have an appreciation of life. I mean, I'm human, so sometimes I forget about that. So I do tell myself, I should be grateful to be here. I mean, I somehow luckily was able to get out of the building, and I think we take for granted that we're going to be around, but you never know what could happen. Yeah, so very appreciative usually of life every day and not taking it for granted. I think the other thing too is I want to experience everything too, because I'm this could be fleeting, right? So that's why I'm always doing a lot of different things. I think too, after surviving something like that, you're what's my true life purpose? My background was in finance, and it's still in finance, but I really wanted to do something that I felt would make a difference. It's not just about financials, and that's kind of how I got into renewables from that, which is interesting as well. So I think Lee and I talk about stoicism all the time. There's a concept, memento mori, that to not take life for granted, which I think a lot of people do. But if you've been through near-death experiences, you look at life a lot differently than the average person looks at it.
Yeah, I think one thing that Benoy and I are both sons of immigrants, right? So I think it's man, we gotta appreciate the fact that our parents were okay, it's everyone, but we're going to move to America, create a better life for our future generation. And why I'm saying this is because America is so relatively safe. And that's, it's something for September 11th to happen is so unheard of or shocking. And how does that help when you look at, where you are today, like that you still feel that luxury of being relatively safe, right? If we're walking into any situation, whereas, you talk about like India or China or all these, countries where it's like there's a lot of unsafe things going on all the time, right? And it's like, how lucky are we that relatively, like, right, or we live in a pretty safe environment. I always laugh, like, there's a Whole Foods near us. Yeah, we always laugh. We go in there and it's like, food safety is pretty damn good in America, and people are worried about whether something is. I mean, I don't want to go into food politics, but it's all relative. It's like, as far as like, generally feeling safe and so on. How lucky are we that we generally can go into public transportation or, anywhere and feel relatively safe. I'm sure that's adjusted in your head on what that means of feeling safe, right, in this world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, too. Like, we haven't had a major terrorist attack since September 11th. Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I think, as you mentioned, like, being sons of immigrants, like, the opportunities, economic opportunities in the U.S. compared to other places in the world, and then the security and safety, I think, like, a lot of people forget. And if you travel to other countries, you'll see, like, there's a stark contrast. My parents are originally from India, and you'll see there's, like, a lot of poverty and famine. And that's, if you never left the U.S., you could never imagine until you go to India. And yeah, I'm very appreciative of the opportunity of being here and, being born here too. And everything, there's a lot of sacrifices that people have made to keeping that security that we've had. Yeah, I don't know what else to really say about that. I mean, it's pretty amazing, the resiliency of the country after that, everyone coming together as a country. And like, I feel like there's a lot of division now, but yeah, I mean, I think the younger generation, I feel like an old man saying this, like, they should learn more about it. People have asked me for a long time to come on the podcast to talk about it. Yeah, and I can't believe it'll be 24 years in a few days. And everyone remembers where they were that day, no matter how old you are, if you're alive at that time. I can't believe I'm saying if you're alive at that time. Yeah. But it's just amazing because it was something that, and it changed the way we look at things today, terrorism and, it's the security that we go through to go on a plane. Like, it's amazing how it wasn't like that later. And just to see like the changes. It was interesting to me too, like, on TikTok, a lot of the younger generations posting about 9/11, which was interesting because, I guess people want to learn about it and it's an experience. That experience is not a good word, but I don't know. It's a life-changing experience. I'm very aware too, like, because of being through something like this, of another attack, meaning that mentally, like, paying attention to everything. That's like, if you want to talk about like positives, obviously, like we talked about, grateful for being alive, but also appreciative of life, but then also too, like, very focused on my surroundings and what exactly is going on, because I've been through that experience before, and you never know what could happen. So I'm always, people know me closely, they know, even though I'm paying attention, like, I'm always paying attention to what's going on around, even though it might not seem obvious. So there's this, pretty normal, like, for someone, who's been through that experience. And then survivor's guilt is like, what's my greater purpose? And that's actually, what's led me to the solar industry from that experience. So yeah, there's so many like life lessons. I could go on and on from that sort of experience. And we moved actually back to the World Trade Center a few months after September 11th. And my cubicle was facing ground zero. So it was very emotional for us. First of all, the air quality was horrible, no matter what they were saying. And then to see like bodies being carried out every single day. They eventually actually moved us to Midtown because people were not feeling well because of the air quality. And that time people weren't really wearing masks. So we moved to Midtown. And then it was emotional too, like when you're seeing like the work that they were doing at Ground Zero and, bodies being carried out so something that I'll never forget. I think it's made me, a very strong person too. It's difficult for sure for anyone to experience it. But on the positive, it's really made me a stronger person, really I had a zest for life before, which is a normal part of my personality, but it took it to another level because I'm like, I can't take this for granted. I don't know how long I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
So, really to live a great life and giving back to the world in my own way, so.
Yeah. I think that's a great takeaway for people. And I'm happy that be sitting here with you today and being able to have this conversation. And it's like most people view the scene where you said, things are collapsing around you, people are dying. It's like a Jerry Bruckheimer movie, right? And
oh my gosh. So it felt like a movie. Like I was thinking, like if you see a movie like Pearl Harbor,
right.
It's like that. And honestly, like I can't even tell you, like seeing the people jumping off the buildings or because of the fire,
Right.
and then hearing the noise has a unique noise when people would jump off and hit the ground. Like these are still things that, are emotional. And it felt like I was in a movie, but it was a real thing. You know what I mean?
Benoy, I think, these are all important lessons to be imparted. And, just one thing I think that my takeaway from hearing you is just a reminder that the only thing that does matter is the present, right?
Oh, for sure.
It sounds like such an easy, obvious thing to do, but it's not. Sometimes if I have a tough moment, I'm worried about it. I think anxiety is something that can be really harmful for everyone's personal momentum.
Oh, for sure.
So like just being appreciative right now, we're sitting here in a meeting room, safe environment. And it's like, I always have to remember everything is pretty perfect, right? There is no debris falling around me and I'm not running around. I'm not worried about, all these people dying. I mean, we're sure you just happened so fast for you. You didn't have time to process anything, right?
Oh, it took time. Obviously, I've relived 846 to that day like thousands of times. I was going to say too, like there are people who are dealing with this every day in other countries. So we should appreciate like what we have, like our security and safety. And I appreciate all the people who give us those freedoms and security, our military, our everyday heroes that we have, who keep our country and have put in their lives, and there are people who are dying, right, for it. So like we're in a relatively secure environment. I think we take it for granted. I think the other thing too is living the present. Most people are either living the past or the future. It's easier said than done, but it's really like mental framing and really like enjoying the moment, being present. And people notice that. And there's so many distractions now, especially like with the phone. And, like I'm going to go back to a book, like How to Stop Worrying, Start Living by Dale Carnegie, a great book that my dad recommended when I was in high school. But it talks about living in the present. By the way, I'm human. Right. Like I have issues where I'm focused on the future and past, but I'm getting better. It's all mentally like working on yourself and, being present. I think like an experience like that, I shouldn't say it because there are people who are having challenges, even still to this day, like handling like that they were there during that moment. But definitely being present is so important than, being your authentic self. But that's like separated from.
Yeah, what a great way to end this episode. I think it's just so much about. It's a cliche, but gratitude, right?
Gratitude,
It's a cliche, but now it's become a cliche. It's become this thing that people put on their t-shirts, and it really does help, right? Like even the purpose, like it's funny, but I'm happy that, it is a cliche.
Yeah.
Because like really one thing I have to say is a shift in our society, I think is people are so negative about like, screens, AI, whatever shit. It's like, I'm telling you, we live in the golden age.
Oh, yes.
It is like young people, like, okay, so small thing, but we're wrapping this up. But, when Benoy and I in our 20s, like, it wasn't cool to be like healthy and like positive and grateful and all these things. It wasn't thing. It was more like cool guy attitude. Like, I always think of like, no one's going to remember this, but like, the movie Singles with Matt Dillon, is it Cameron Crowe's the director? But anyway, it's like this character's like cigarette smoking, like, malcontent, which is cool at the time. And nowadays it's like, great, we have all these, people trying to be fitness influencers, and we talk about wellness. And maybe it's going to be dialed back. I don't think that we all need to like drink electrolytes first thing in the morning unless we're going out in the desert. And it's going a little far. That's always going to be consumerism. But I think generally, we are in a better place as far as like something as simple as mental health awareness, which we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just as simple as that. Of course, it can be abused by like capitalists, incentivize like sales related, marketing related things. But like, hey, it's up to us as individuals to, know the difference for ourselves. Our gratitude, genuine gratitude is genuine gratitude, whether it's on a t-shirt or a cap. If you actually feel gratitude, it is powerful. It really
It is a powerful.
It is powerful, and it makes you execute better in life about everything. It's like, it's such a silly expression now. It's become trite, but it's become that way. But it really does make a difference.
Yeah. So like what I do in the morning now, and I know I talked to you about this, like I write down the 3 things that I'm grateful for. And that really like doing that in first thing in the morning really like changes my attitude. And yeah, being grateful for what you have. And even like, if you think about it, most of us are really lucky, like with our health and other things. And, it's just gratitude makes a difference. And I try to do it at night as well. I would say, most of the time I'm just exhausted but gratitude is a very big thing. And I'm gratitude for you, Lee, this morning and making the time to do this interview. It's interesting because like, that's kind of how I got into the solar industry, was because after 9/11, a lot of wars have been because of oil. And with the electricity or energy transition to renewable energy to electric cars and vehicles, we're not going to be dependent on oil. So hopefully that will lessen the amount of wars. And there's been so many Americans who've died for oil, not in a nice way. I'm trying to
it's like the positive.
Yeah, a way of it. So, but unfortunately, as I get older, I realize too that there'll always be war.
Yeah.
Like that's just human, nature. But, that's part of the reason why I could have stayed in finance. I could have stayed in a Wall Street sort of environment, but I really wanted to make a difference or be a positive influence. Like from every negative event, like 9/11, like there are positives that have come through that. I don't know if I would have been in the solar industry if that event didn't happen. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Benoy. I really appreciate you being, brave. You sharing all these moments. It must be hard, but I think your listeners will benefit.
Yeah, and the 25th anniversary is coming up next year. We'll probably do something more organized. I appreciate Lee doing this with me. You're probably the only person like I would feel comfortable like doing this interview, so I appreciate you making the time.
All right, let's go. Let's appreciate the day. Seize it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Seize the day.
Thank you, Benoy.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Solar Maverick Podcast. The Solar Maverick Podcast is brought to you by Renew Energy. We're a solar development and consulting firm. If you believe that this podcast is adding value to you, please give us a 5-star review and share with those that you think could benefit from this information. Please email all questions, suggestions, and feedback to info@renewenergy.com. That's info@reneuenergy.com. The Solar Maverick Podcast is produced by Podcast Laundry and executive produced by Benoy Thanjan and Kevin Y. Brown.